I now call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. It is 4 o'clock. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic, which stands nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have a roll call. Mr. Montgomery,
Present.
Mr. Limbach,
Present.
Mr. Watkins,
Present.
Mr. Young, Mr. Young. We'll come back to you, Mr. Gonzalez.
Present.
Mr. Martsky, I understand, is absent. Mr. Saunders,
Present.
Ms. Welch. Are we having trouble online?
No, my mistake. They're actually not online.
Okay, so Ms. Welch is absent and Mr. Young is also absent. Chair is present. We have 6 members and we do have a quorum. Let's do a call to public before we go on to elections. Pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes 38-431.01H, this is an opportunity for the public to comment. Individuals are invited to address the commission on any issue within the commission's jurisdiction. Since commissioners may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda, commission action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. I have no forms. Is there anyone online for the call to public? Thank you. At this time, we need to elect a chairman and a vice chairman for the 2024 season. Are there any nominations?
Yes, I will nominate Kim Depew for chair.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
Doing a fine job.
Second.
Second by Nathan Watkins. Are there any other nominations? Current chair is willing to continue. Thank you. Do we take a roll call vote on that? Mr. Montgomery,
Aye.
Mr. Limbach,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Aye.
Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Chair is willing, votes aye, carries. Thank you very much. Now nominations for vice chair, please.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Limbach.
I nominate Mr. Robert Montgomery.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Mr. Gonzalez, thank you for the second. Let's do a roll call vote on that, please. Mr. Montgomery, do you accept?
I do.
Mr. Limbach?
Aye.
Mr. Watkins?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Saunders?
Aye.
And the chair also votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery.
Try.
Approval of the previous month's minutes.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Saunders. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Watkins? Let's vote again. Mr. Montgomery, minutes? Do you approve?
Yes, I do approve. Thank you.
Mr. Limbach?
Aye.
Mr. Watkins?
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Mr. Saunders?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you very much. Do we have our ground rules? Probably should have said those earlier. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The ground rules are as follows. Please turn off your cell phones or silence the ringers. Please be polite to other stakeholders. No applause, no booing, no cheering. If you desire to speak, fill out a speaker information form and submit it to the planning staff before the meeting. Speakers must use the microphone to capture comments. This is down front in the middle.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Young is now online.
Thank you. Good evening. We observe the following time limits for speakers: 5 minutes for call to public, 10 minutes for applicant statement, 5 minutes for supporters or those opposed, and 5 minutes for applicant's rebuttal. Each elected county supervisor appoints 3 commissioners to staggered 4-year terms. Up to 3 commissioners are from cities, at least 6 commissioners are from unincorporated areas. A commissioner's service is pro bono. A quorum is 5 commissioners. A majority vote passes a motion, a tie vote fails. For special use permits, a tie vote triggers a rehearing at the next meeting. Special use docket decisions. Special use dockets are approved by the Commission. Appeals of special use decisions are considered by the Board of Supervisors. Appeal procedures can be found at the county website. For additional assistance, contact a case planner. First on our agenda this evening, an applicant-initiated special use authorization request for an existing communication tower with supporting ground equipment at 1026 East Promenade Road. Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is a staff presentation for docket SU 23-29, an applicant initiated special use authorization request for a communication tower on assessor's parcel number 2084705S. Request is, the applicant is Integrated Elements Unlimited, care of Merlin Henricks. Current zoning district is residential. The comp plan designation is rural, and the growth area is rural community. Current use of the property is a single-family residence. The proposed use is communication tower. The property is located near Pomerene, approximately 57 miles north of our location. The address is actually 1026 East Pomerene Road. There is a single-family residence on the property. The property totals approximately 23 acres, and the project area is about 200 square feet. There is an existing tower, and it's not really a tower, it's more of a pole. It's a galvanized, 2-inch galvanized pole in sections. It's been there for about 1.5 years. It's approximately 20 feet tall. There is supporting ground equipment, which includes solar panels as well as battery packs and a secure storage facility. Not a facility, but like a box, a storage box. This equipment is located on top of a ridge at an elevation of approximately 3,670 feet. These images show Pomerene Road viewing west and viewing east. Again, images of the subject property viewing to the north where you can see the sign posted on the property. Also, you can see the ridge line where the existing pole is located. Additional images, this is drone images of the site. These images are facing to the south, again, with the existing pole and equipment. This provides some context as to where on the property this equipment is located, approximately 32 feet from the east property line. Applicant provided photo. This was provided in December. Some additional photos provided by the applicant this week. Again, showing the equipment on the ground, as well as the galvanized pole with the equipment mounted on the pole. This is an applicant provided site plan showing the equipment project area. Those figures show the distances from the property lines. An elevation provided by the applicant. Again, this is a 2-inch galvanized pipe system. The exposed portion of the pole is about 21 feet above grade. There's 6 feet below grade. This pole is supported with 3 guy wires, and again, the solar panels, battery containers, and a storage box at the base of the pole. As the Commission is aware, there are 10 special use authorization factors that need to be considered when evaluating a special use request. Factors in favor, staff finds that the request complies with 9 factors, including compliance with adopted plan and zoning district. This use is permissible in the R residential district with a special use. There's no major development that requires any substantial street improvements or impacts traffic circulation. No significant impacts to infrastructure. No major requirements for site development standards. The applicant did participate in the public input process as per the zoning regulations. Offsite impacts are minimal and water conservation is not included within this project. This is a low intensity portable use in an area with limited residential development. The terrain offers a very desirable location with a low probability of nearby incompatible uses in the future. Again, it's on top of a ridge, unlikely to be encroached upon by any sort of a residential structure. No opposition from surrounding property owners. I would like to kind of add a caveat to that. We did receive a call from a gentleman who was not a property owner, but apparently resides in one of the nearby properties. However, we did not hear from the property owner themselves, but this gentleman did state opposition on multiple grounds. Factors not in favor, none have been identified by staff. For the citizen review and public notice requirement processes, the applicant did send letters on 6 December. Between 19 and 20 December, staff mailed notices, posted the property, and published a legal ad. Wanted to, because this is kind of an unusual situation, this isn't what we would consider typically as a large communications tower, like 150, 180 foot lattice tower with multiple cellular providers. It's a very small local broadband provider, more of a pole than a tower. I wanted to kind of read some of these definitions into the record very quickly. The zoning regulations defines a communication tower as any support structure, including lattice type towers or monopoles used to achieve the necessary elevation for communication equipment. Communication equipment is defined as a facility or shelter used for housing equipment for switching, processing, transmission, and or reception of FCC licensed wireless communication services involving the use of an antenna array, connection cables, and equipment shelters. Additionally, there are some development standards that are unique to communications towers. I'm not going to read all of these, but basically the height of a tower cannot exceed the minimum setback. If a tower is abandoned and not in use for 12 months, the county can require that tower to be removed. It's a violation to have any noise or vibration nuisances produced. Madam Chair and Commissioners, that concludes staff's presentation of docket SU 23-29. We are available for your questions.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call for the applicant's statement. You have 10 minutes, Mr. Henrich. Is that correct?
First of all, I'd like to thank the commission for even hearing this case for the permit. It is appreciated. My name is Merlin Henricks, and I DBA as Integrated Elements Unlimited and have since 2002.
Can we get a little more volume? Excuse me.
Maybe I should talk into it more directly.
I was having trouble hearing Mr. Taylor too.
Okay.
That helps though.
That sufficient?
That helps.
Okay. Anyway, I may refer to Integrated Elements Unlimited in what I read here as IEU, which is generally what's known across the web and in the public domain. Our offices are located at 769 East Country Club Drive in Benson. Actually, it's halfway between Benson and St. David, kind of in the country there. Anyway, this company is referred to by most federal and state agencies as a WISP, a wireless internet service provider. And there are various regulations that they have set up under the 96-97 Telecom Act that provide certain protections for us so people can't just walk off with our equipment wherever we may put it to provide service, broadband service to various subscribers or ranchers in some cases, and remote houses that are not within 2 or 3 miles of any other kind of populated area. We do have a web presence, and we do function under the 96-97 Telecom Act. We don't function as a major backbone carrier like Verizon or any of the large communications entities. As a result, in the specifications, the equipment specifications that I submitted with an affidavit, most of our equipment operates at usually around 683 milliwatts, and so that's thousands of a watt. Whereas you'll see a cell tower or whatever broadcast at 100 to 1,000 watts. So our actual EMF and RF presence is very low. It's that's why we can be knocked down by ham radios and CBs that are overpowered and things of that nature. I've been involved in microwave communications, software, and systems engineering for a little over 56 years now. And I started out in the U.S. Army in 1968 and got most of my preliminary training in microwave and cryptographics and things of that nature from at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And at that time, that was the Army's communications training center. I have three other staff members from 3 to 6 years of experience operating this equipment. I've trained them under OJ as on-the-job training so that they're capable of configuring, installing, and diagnosing any problems, troubleshooting any issues that come up with the installations or the customers that acquire access to the installations signals. The application for permits was initiated originally in November. In our 22 plus years of operation in the San Pedro River Valley, we have operated under the assumption the FCC knew what they were talking about when we explained what and how we were providing broadband access to rural communities in and around the San Pedro River Valley. At that point in time, they indicated to us we would not need licensing and or permits unless we built towers higher than 75 feet. There was never an issue about using customer locations to relay to other locations, since our installations in a lot of areas require what are called redundant capabilities, so that if signal coming from one direction to their location fails, we have it coming to them from another location so that we have backup, so that if they need emergency services or something, that capability remains, or even though there may be a failure somewhere in the network. I want to get past the redundancy. Okay, this would, better ensure a subscriber could get service even if communications were severed coming from one direction, but not the backup direction. This also allowed us to provide service to other remote areas where no service was available at that time, and thus gave ranches and residences access to broadband. The installation now in question was erected as a result of the property owner requesting service and asking if we could provide better service to her friends and neighbors in the valley around her property. The installation currently occupies about an 8-foot by 8-foot square space on the ground on that hill. The gear that's on the pole that's shown there is less than 40 pounds. Currently, as a result of the installation, we serve broadband signals to 8 of the property owners and over 200 other remote subscribers. Removing this installation would impact over 200 uplink subscribers and about 100 downlink subscribers due to the network saturation issues which would occur. It should be noted we provided extensive extra bandwidth during the lockdown period in 2020 and 2021 for people which had to work from home, and for the school-age children to be able to do remote schooling. We also provide service to various individuals from time to time free of charge when they become indigent to the point they cannot afford it. This periodically occurs for cancer patients and people with substance abuse issues who cannot afford broadband for their children necessary for school. We also have subscribers like Pomerine School and Pomerine Fire District and have for a number of years to help reduce their costs and provide more bandwidth than they could previously afford or even access. We and our subscribers would certainly appreciate the issuance of the required permits. And I thank you. for
Thank
any
you, sir.
questions.
We may call you back. Thank you.
Okay.
At this time, the public hearing is open. And do I have comments from any other persons online? Hearing none, I have no in-person requests. We will declare that portion closed. Mr. Heinrich, you do have time for a rebuttal, 5 minutes. You could utilize that if you forgot something, or if you're good, we'll pass.
I really don't think, and I've kind of been queried as to not get into really technical information because it would kind of be superfluous for the group.
We may come up with some questions from the commission,
Okay.
even still. But thank you.
Mhm.
Now is the time for commission discussion. Do we have any questions of the applicant or staff?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Saunders?
I apologize. I didn't quite hear everything you said, but this is the existing line and you're putting a new unit on it? Or is this, existing tower? Or are you doing a new tower?
The installation has been there for over a year and a half.
Right.
And because someone filed a complaint, it ended up here. We've never had that in the last 22 years of putting up a pipe and putting antennas on it. We never had anyone complain because everyone wanted the service. So as a result of that, the individual called the zoning commission or whatever here. We're still not sure who he is, who he works for. He may work for a competitor or something, but he lives 3.5 miles away from the installation and can't even see it from where he lives. So we're kind of dumbfounded as to why he even filed the complaint. But the complaint to some extent indicated that we were a public nuisance. And I don't know how I respond to that. I don't know what that.
Thank you.
Are there any
Madam
other
Chair.
questions? Mr. Limbach?
Mr. Henricks, while you're up there, you indicated that you may expand the pole to accommodate additional equipment. Can you define or expand the pole?
In reality, that pole will probably never be increased in height. That's the only thing that would happen is it would probably, the max that we do any poles anywhere, even that are attached via standoffs to people's houses because they can't get service because they have trees too high around them, things like that. We don't like to climb on ladders above 30 feet, so it would never extend beyond that. And it's 21 feet now, and the location that it's at is just really we're not really concerned about it being able to increase the size, but if you want to allow it to get to 30 feet, it's not a main argument for us.
Thank you. And then my last question, your application kind of discussed pre-designated time slots for Wi-Fi users, and I didn't quite understand that.
I'm not aware of what.
I didn't know if that meant that there were going to be periods of outage for at different times for certain users.
We don't schedule that. I mean, unless we have to replace a piece of equipment. That's the only time that would occur. It's actually our uptime is about 99.2%. So we're also not we don't regulate the amount of use. People can use anything like you would with a phone. You're only allowed 20 gig or 4 gig or whatever this is an unlimited service that allows them to use it as much as they can use it based on the plan that they purchased.
Thank you. I do have a staff question if that's okay.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Mr. Taylor, zoning regulations require the submission of some certificate, report, or plan stamped by the Arizona Registered Professional Engineer, and also towers up to 150 feet in height to accommodate at least 2 providers. And I just wanted to know if Mr. Hendricks is in compliance with both of these. I mean, per our regulations.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Limbach, to answer both of those questions, there is a provision in section 2.51 of the zoning regulations, which is specific development standards relative to communication facilities. And there are 2 requirements. One, communication towers have to be signed off on by an Arizona licensed registrant. And the other one is that an engineering plan or report must accompany any installation of new equipment on an existing tower. So that really isn't the case here because he's not requesting any new equipment being placed on this pole. The second one, again, there is the provision in there that up to 150 feet requires two co-locators, and above that requires 3 co-locators. In conversations with the applicant, we've processed that as basically a waiver, and we've amended our staff recommendation with a condition to reflect that. It would be impractical, given the nature of the broadband service that the applicant is providing, to offer his equipment for co-location purposes. So we are basically reflecting that as a waiver in our recommendation.
That addressed my questions earlier too. Thank you. Is there anyone else have any questions?
I have
Mr.
a
Buck?
question, staff. As a recipient of WIS type service is great compared to what we could get otherwise. There's a lot of WIS popping up around the county. Is there a mechanism where these people can be notified of the process that they need to come in and get a permit or whatever? Because a lot of them, they're going on private property, they're attached to a house. I can think of one, probably where my signal comes from, that's attached to a house. And you can see the whole tower array, but I don't know if they know I need to do that.
It's a good point. You know, we could always reach out to the public information officer and put out a news, press release to let people know that a permit is required, but we are complaint driven in Cochise County. So unless we receive a complaint, we typically do not follow up. Otherwise, we'd be doing that all day, quite frankly.
Okay.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, in regards to that, we did, I don't know if this commission even existed in 2000 or not, but we did make an inquiry originally because we got a license from the city of Benson for the facility we have there. Or we were given the okay to put it up, and their response to us at that time was they didn't have qualified engineers to understand what I was showing them as far as engineering documents and things of that nature. But when I called the county, no one seemed to know who I would talk to about a Wi-Fi installation. So there is a lack of information out there on that level.
You don't think things have improved in, what was that, 23 years? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm hoping things have improved beyond what you're describing.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
And we need a volume increase on all of this. I'm hoping we're doing better than we were 23 years ago.
Oh, you definitely are.
Yeah. Are there any more questions for applicant or staff? Let's close the discussion. Mr. Taylor, do you have a summary and a recommendation, please?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, staff recommends conditional approval of docket SU 23-29 for an existing communication tower with supporting ground equipment. If the Commission wishes to grant the approval, staff recommends the following conditions. Applicant shall provide a notarized affidavit confirming the distance of the existing communication tower and supporting equipment from the east property line. I'd like to insert a note here that the applicant has done that. Tower height shall not exceed 21 feet as it is currently configured, and setbacks depicted on the site plan shall be maintained. Condition number 2, applicant has discretion whether to accommodate additional providers as required by section 2.51.120 of county zoning regulations per waiver request. And that is the section specific to co-location. So we're basically leaving that up to the discretion of the applicant. Standard conditions related to acceptance of conditions, permitting timeframes, and modifications to an improved special use will continue to apply and have not been modified by this request.
Call for the motion, please.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Watkins.
I move to approve docket SU 23-29 Pomerine Communication Tower with the conditions of approval recommended by staff, the factors of approval constituting the findings of fact.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Saunders. Is there any final discussion before we vote?
Thank you.
We will now vote. Mr. Montgomery,
Thank you.
Mr. Limbach,
Aye.
Mr. Watkins,
Aye.
Mr. Young. Mr. Young, are you there?
Mr. Young had to leave the meeting.
Okay, all right. Mr. Gonzalez
Aye.
and Mr. Saunders.
Aye.
Ms. Welch is absent. Chair votes aye. The motion passes. Any individual disagreeing with this action has the right to appeal to the Board of Supervisors within 15 days. An application for appeal is available from the clerk at the office Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, or online at cochise.az.gov. Thank you and congratulations. The public hearing portion of our meeting is closed. We now move to item number 2, zoning text amendment R-24-01, agritourism. Mr. Coxworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. We don't have very many of these work sessions, but there's nothing to vote on tonight. This is an opportunity for staff to kind of get the temperature from the commission on some proposed changes that staff would like to bring before this commission at a later date. I'll go through my presentation, happy to answer any questions that you have tonight, but again, there's nothing to act on tonight concerning this potential text amendment. As you know, agritourism or agriculture in Cochise County is a very important part of our economy, and staff believes that this text amendment to the zoning or regulations would be in support of the agricultural community and our local economy. Staff would initiate this zoning request to be heard before you by providing this and making it easier for small farms in the county or even larger farms to really educate the public, diversify their business in support of agriculture, generate additional revenue for the small or mid-sized farms, support our rural economy, invites people to the farm to help educate them, and then also promotes local agriculture that we have here in Cochise County. I want to talk about what agricultural exemption is for zoning. Essentially, if someone has 5 commercial acres of a commercial commodity, such as a vineyard, alfalfa, they could be qualified as agricultural exempt from Cochise County zoning regulations. If they're exempt from Cochise County zoning regulations, then they're exempt from permits for structures that are associated with the operation of the farm. That would include the home they live in, a barn, accessory structures, It could also include housing for labor workers who work on the farm, and that's per a court challenge that happened numerous years ago here in the state of Arizona. Proposed definition is in your packet and on the screen. What's important about this is that if they are ag exempt and they would like to diversify the farm and have some of the uses that will go through listed, that they are accessory or subordinate in size to the operation of the farm. A good example would be a large farm that maybe has a couple of guest lodges to rent to people, invite them to the farm. Not uncommon for wineries or for vineyards to have this. Very pleasant atmosphere on these farms. Typically, this would require a special use permit for guest lodging in an RU zoning district. Our proposed amendment would allow in an RU zoning district this to be allowed as a permitted use. So although they can place structures on their property under the ag exemption, like a home or a barn associated with the farm, they still would be required to obtain a permit for the agricultural enterprise businesses that they're potentially proposing. And then we're also implementing some site development standards that are in your amendment. As I mentioned, we are proposing this to be a permitted use on ag exempt property. We do have a process where a property owner could apply for ag exempt zoning from the county. They can apply for that online. We do require some type of proof. Typically, first thing is that they do they have at least 5 commercial acres under cultivation is the first thing we look for. And is it a commercial commodity? Are they engaged in a business? What we're seeing a lot of for your smaller farms is vineyards. They usually start out pretty small. But once they have that 5 acres of commercial commodity of the vineyards in the ground, we're somewhat lenient where we don't necessarily require them to have the grapes fully in production because it could take 3 to 5 years. But if we see there's intent there, the plants are in the ground, we typically will allow for that ag exemption of the property. We are proposing that this would be a special use in a residential zoning district. We do have large swaths of our zoning out there where potentially you could have a small farm that meets the ag exemption. Also, usually residential is much more restrictive, and this would provide some protections if there are residences in the area. So it opens up a little bit some of the potential special uses that you could apply for in an R zoning district if you are if you have a small farm and you are ag exempt. And then we would also allow it as a permitted use in your planned development. Zoning, you typically, we haven't seen a lot of master development plans where the PD zoning would be in place, but we're proposing a permitted use there as well. So these are the types of agritourism enterprises that we're looking at. Farm tours, guided tours of farms or ag operations where visitors can learn about farming practices, U-pick operations, farm to table experiences, and this would also include wine tasting rooms, educational programs, workshops, demonstrations, or classes, guest lodging where visitors can experience the farm activities or the farm activities as part of their stay. This would also include RV parking and tent camping, but we are specifically excluding a motel, hotel. That would be a use that we would not consider to be subordinate in size to a farm operation. Agritourism events, special events, a lot of the wineries do have a couple events a year where they allow members to their club to sample the new wines. Outdoor recreation, hiking and birding, corn mazes, wagon and hay rides. If they are proposing riding stables, commercial riding stables, then they would require a minimum of 10 acres for that. We're also allowing a retail element to it. Shops or roadside stands for retail sale. Oftentimes in a wine tasting room, they are selling product, sometimes product from the other farms in the area or other wineries in the area. And then the last one is other agritourism enterprises that maybe we didn't think of that would be appropriate and, again, subordinate or accessory to the farm operation. We are pulling back a little bit. In the past, they did make a zoning regulation change that would include wine tasting rooms under the ag exemption. Some of these wine tasting rooms aren't just small little buildings where people can come and sample the wine. They've gotten, some of them have gotten fairly large where they serve free food. They have kitchens, almost looks like a restaurant. So we are pulling that back because the public is invited to these rooms. We want to ensure that site development standards are met, that it is built to building code, and they meet all other requirements for the safety of the public. And Maribel here is open for any discussion that you'd like to have. Feel free to ask any questions that you have. And yes, sir.
There's a push out there, maybe it's been for a while, but I noticed here lately that RVs are now going to these farms or these orchards and they're making that their destination so they can stay there and help pick the fruit or whatever the case might be. Would this kind of exempt them from that? I mean, well, I guess what I'm asking, would this create an RV park?
If the people are going there specifically to work on the farm, we would consider them under the housing for farm labor and exempt from the zoning. But if they're leasing the spaces just to allow people to enjoy the farm for the most part, then we would require them to go through the permitting process. And we did have, when I first started, we did have a challenge to that went to the Board of Adjustment and found that RVs would be allowed to house farm workers. Yes, sir.
Mr. Gonzalez.
On our farm, we do a lot to protect the wildlife, the environment, use biological control of insects in our orchards, that kind of thing. So we get people that just want to go look at birds. Some of them just want to go sit there, drink coffee, and no charge. My wife is very generous. They read the paper and they just want a quiet place to sit, just look at the landscape, pet the dog, and take a walk around the orchard in the desert adjacent to our place. Would that fall under this category?
I would say no. You're essentially just allowing some members of the public without, doesn't sound like you're advertising. You're not charging them. You don't necessarily have to charge them, but it doesn't sound like to me you're actually running an additional business. You're just allowing people to enjoy your property, which is great.
Well, we get 2 or 3 vans sometimes with bird watchers. I don't let them drive into our property, stay at the gate. They go and set up cameras and do this and that away from home. And they bring their lunch and whatever. And by 1, 2 o'clock, they're gone. But they like to go there because we attract a lot of birds. Since we do biological control of insects in our orchards, we use bird seed. It's to our advantage to have lots of birds there to kill all the insects. And so we have birds that are unique to the area. And they know that, and they go there. It's not really, I guess I could make it into a business, but I don't have time to mess with my wife so on. That comes to me, that looks like it might step on the line of being exempted or something. What do you think?
I think I might show up and watch some birds on your property. It sounds great. We're not going to bother you for that, Mr. Gonzalez, but, if you build a parking area and you've got a sign and come see the birds here, and you're kind of doing more to invite the public to your property. And how many acres do you have? Yeah, under the 160, you're going to be exempt under, because you're greater than 20 acres anyway. Yeah, you're just providing recreational opportunities for
Yeah.
for the public with that.
Drink coffee or have a glass of wine when the sun is setting.
Yeah.
It bothers me sometimes, so I get home and I'm all beat up. My wife is in her glorious splendor entertaining her friends.
It sounds like they are mostly friends, and
But it's
You
too much.
you bring up a good point where we feel it's the business is to run a farm, and having the public onto their property, it's a liability. It could be disruptive,
Yeah.
and that if someone is truly having an agricultural enterprise, one of these subordinate uses, their intention is to keep it really subordinate and small, just from the perspective of managing that and protecting the property and the farm and potentially liability. So it's easy to spot when it's an agricultural enterprise as opposed to a full.
Right up our 1 acre pond because of liability. Had legal advice from our attorney. So we don't have a pond anymore.
That's sad.
But you could set up tables on what used to be the dike and stare at the sun go down. Drink a beer or something. But it's not everything's a business. There's a lot of people that really like our landscape. They like the people. Most people are friendly. And it's good therapy for them, much more for them than it is for me. But I can tolerate it. Yeah. So what I do with this, just go with the other exemptions that I have as a farm. As a business.
With the example you provided, as I mentioned, this isn't targeted towards something like that.
A lot of people come to this county to hike. A lot of trails, and I didn't see that on your list.
We did include that under outdoor recreation activities such as hiking and bird watching, corn mazes, wagon and hay rides. You do have that, but you're not really advertising it. You're not charging. People just happen to show up and you're just a really nice person. Allow them on your property.
I have to advertise and charge.
It's got to look like a business. And you don't have to charge, but it has to look like you're attracting them there for a specific purpose. And I think within reason here as staff, we would look at something like this and say, there isn't a need to apply
I
for any
don't
kind
really
of
see an
permit.
advantage go through this process to be accepted. This category says we're already accepted. We're farming, so we got water exemptions and all kinds of stuff that we got to deal with beyond that. But this seems like it's for somebody that wants to grow a little business, provide some kind of therapy or entertainment for visitors. And I don't know a lot of farmers and ranchers that have time for that.
Jerry, I'll give you a perfect example where it would fit. I don't know if it's going to happen, but when part of our orchard matures, because we have our commercial kitchen, Jackie wants to do dinner in the orchard. It'd be a paid event, hopefully not every week. God, maybe 2 times a year, but it's just a lot of work. But it's a way to diversify.
Wow. Diversified already, Nathan, with all those people going
Oh,
around.
we're always looking for more ways to diversify.
Well, and make a little money off your diversity. I think the whole point, is it not, Dan, to diversify people's income a little bit and supplement income as things change on the farm, so to speak?
Yeah, to make it easier, really. Christine was just saying expectation of profit is a great way of putting it.
There you go.
And, Yeah, it provides, when you have you have a vineyard, you have 3 to 5 years before you potentially have a product that's usable. This is potentially a way to make it easier for them to diversify without it overtaking the real purpose of or the use of the property, which is a farm.
Yeah, pecans, and it takes 6, 8 years for them to provide, produce it. So that's a large capital investment. Wait and you pray and wait till you get a crop back. A lot of small farms have small pecan nurseries that are just getting off the ground. Anybody needs help, it would be there because they're not gonna make a penny out of those pecan trees. Just a lot of money going one way, nothing coming back.
That's why we're diversifying. We make money on other stuff right now.
I want to charge everybody.
You've given him an idea. What caused this to come up on your list of to-do?
We've had it on the list for quite some time, like docket load this month. We try not to put these on heavy docket loads, just adding to your, keeping
But I
us
mean,
here late at night.
this idea of agritourism.
Yeah, it's been happening in other rural communities in support of small farms and agriculture. In the planning community, there's been a lot of discussions, particularly outside larger cities. How do they protect farms from development? And, agriculture is obviously a very important part of our country. It's where we get our food from. Again, it's just really just supportive and really applicable to a place like Cochise County where we have so much agriculture, particularly Sulphur Springs Valley. It's almost all agriculture.
Speaking of that, do we have a layer on our GIS that shows our ag exempt properties?
No, but it's a great idea. It's
We really need that.
Yeah, and we have ag exempt zoning, but there's also a way to look at if they have 20 acres or more, then they receive a tax exemption for their ag. That might be a little bit easier because it's just based on a code. Not all properties that are farms apply for that ag exemption, and they build what they want out
It would
there.
be nice to see what
Yeah.
percentage of our county is even eligible for this new code. Can we go back to what Mr. Saunders talked about? The RV, the tent camping seems unrestricted in this, just wide open, no limits. Come and park. I don't like it.
Yeah,
Neighbors are going to be mad.
it could, it's a good point, and I think it could be abused if it's allowed by permitted use. Now, they do have to apply for permits, and at that time, we would decide whether it's subordinate or not.
So apply for a permit for,
The agritourism enterprise,
oh yeah, that itself. But
Yeah.
as far as in terms of how many RVs, can we put limits? Can you, because what, are you going to make them dry camp? Is that the idea? Or are they going to have to develop site plugins and sewer? Then they come under the health department.
it depends on what they're proposing, that we would subject them more than likely to the density requirements. So if it's RU4, it would be subject to density. So for example, if they have a 10-acre farm, 5 acres is under production. The other 5 acres, they wanted to do an RV park. Subject to density, they really would only be allowed to have one RV space.
Oh, so you fall back on the RU zoning
Yeah,
to limit those RVs.
yeah.
Okay.
Most farms are larger, so they would have more acreage, which, actually we would probably allow 2 RV spaces since they have.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how we would view it. Now,
That was help.
if somebody doesn't agree with my interpretation, then they always have an opportunity to appeal that to a Board of Adjustment.
You could put according to, this includes RV parking and tent camping
I got a question.
per zoning.
Well, I'll make that note. It's a really good point.
I got a comment.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Last year I was in New Mexico, northern New Mexico, and they had a cultural event. There were small farms and there was some people that were butchering a hog the old traditional way, out in the ranch and all that. And, they're all set up, the food inspectors there and all that. And they were charging people, they actually had bleachers, people that wanted to see how this is done. Then at the end, they had a meal that they ate from the hog that was butchered and cooked and served. It was like $20 a head. So if I do something like that, I can get exempt, right?
Yeah, and we're not exempting these. You know, this isn't an attempt
It's a
to
business now.
increase exemptions, but if they've got bleachers and they probably anticipate more than a few people or more than their friends and family to participate in this, and based on what you've described, if that came in and we were talking over the counter, I would classify that as an agricultural enterprise requiring permits, and then we would apply some site development standards. Do they have parking? Do they have
Yeah.
any, you know?
They've been doing this for years. That Mexico, state of New Mexico, the health folks are there. And they advertise and they publicize and they have pictures. The other thing they do is they go from there. A day later, they're at a ranch where you're branding steers and all that kind of stuff. So they get like exposed to ranching and farming, and you pick vegetables all in 1 week. And all the small farmers benefit from that. So, and people look forward to that. They sell out pretty quick. We don't have that kind of stuff here. In spite of the great cow heritage that we have and farming and commodity production, right now you could take people by the busload to see how pecans are getting processed. You know, and a lot of people come and ask, hey, when are you going to harvest your pecans and what do you do with them and can we watch and all that kind of stuff. We had a group from China come in the spring after the pecan trees were leafed out. They wanted to look at the leaves because they have discovered and have made a business of selling pecan tea in China. And now they're growing trees for both things, for the leaves, which we here just discard, and for pecans. And they use the shells and everything's done by hand. But they made it into a good business for them. And, you know, this might be a good opportunity to also educate the small farmers to explore and identify economic possibilities that are out there that you're so busy you don't have time to think about all this.
Takes a good promoter.
Very good.
Go for it.
I don't know if you can afford me. Be busy doing something else.
You try the pea first, though.
Yeah, well,
You tried first. I want to know how it tastes.
Yeah.
I come from a long line of pecan growers, and all of the old guys were raised on pecan tea, like I was raised. Pecan
From the
tea
leaves.
is a mild tranquilizer, but it doesn't hurt you. When babies are young, little, and they're crying because they're teething or whatever, the women would make pecan tea, give it to them in a bottle with a little milk, 20 minutes and they're out, you know? So when you're out there and it's cold, you come in the house, all of the old guys that have been harvesting pecans and all that come in and drink pecan tea, and it allows them to relax and have a good night. It's a natural tranquilizer that doesn't have any side effects. It's been used for 1,000 years. You
I
know?
think you should bring
And
it
it's
to family.
free.
Do you have to have green leaves?
Yeah,
Oh.
you get the leaves when they're green, and then you tie them up like we do chili vistas. And you hang them up in your attic. You just go there and grab tea when you want, and it'll last all year.
Madam Chair, do you think there are any other questions of the commission?
Mr. Limbach, you have things?
Just one quick question, and it's regarding the parking. Is there a reason why, like under guest lodging, you use the word parking as opposed to like parking and occupancy? Does parking mean, does it just suggest that they'll be occupying the spot as well.
Where are you referencing?
I'm sorry, page 3 of 4 toward the top, under guest lodging, letter E.
So accommodations where visitors can experience daily
Right.
farm life and activities as part of their stay to include RV.
Parking.
Oh, I see. Okay. So
Like,
maybe
we
that
say
could be changed to RV.
Parking and occupancy, or parking, lodging, or,
Or RV spaces
Space.
for occupancy or something. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. It's not just parking in a parking lot,
right.
right, for visiting. It would be for RV parking, for overnight parking, RV overnight parking.
And then on that same page, number 5, applicant submittals, letter A, properly completed and filled out. Can we, that's kind of redundant. Can we just say a properly completed agritourism enterprise application?
Yeah, and we may revise that. Most of these uses are just use permits, or sometimes they need permits for a building. So that might be tweaked a little bit, but that's noted, Mr. Lindbach.
That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Watkins, anything?
No.
Mr. Montgomery, you alive?
Yes, thank you.
Saunders, anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez, are you good?
One more thing,
Oh, hurry.
you know, if you grow up on a farm or visit farms and all that, parking is the least of your concerns.
Because you have more space than the rest of us.
Oh, yeah. I think parking should be, footnoted if needed, which will never be needed, a special parking lot. Because if you got a farm or a ranch, you got space, you have crews all the time, but parking's their beneficial.
I do have one thing in the category of overthinking. This has been hard for me ever since I came on the commission. We have categories A through D and a couple others. And then we have plan designations, and those are within the categories at any rate. We have the word enterprise in our plan designations for categories A, B, and C. And then we have enterprise for see, I told you this was overthinking. Enterprise redevelopment for categories A, B, and C. Well, those aren't rural. I mean, you're doing this, maybe you should take out the word enterprise. That's where I'm going.
In my proposal, or
Yeah, the word enterprise is like, doesn't work with our urban growth, community growth, rural growth, and then the plan designations inside that.
I can look for a synonym.
I don't know, just read that. See, and I
Yeah.
may not be looking at it.
We are looking at updating our comp plan
Yeah.
this
Hmm.
year, potentially updating our comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Looking
And I
at
noticed a lot of
those.
changes online, by the way.
Yeah.
Looks good.
Maybe the
Anyway.
word operation, or,
Or no word. I mean,
Or no word.
agritourism is a noun in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's a thing. But I didn't want it to get all messed up with the word enterprise. That's a weird word, enterprise.
Yeah, I think Mr. Limbach had this question in an email. Why I chose that word, it's basically just another word for business.
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
and I actually looked it up in the dictionary, and that's what it says. It says sometimes complicated business. So we probably don't want it to be complicated.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll
Anyway, just a thought.
I'll look and see, but we'll brainstorm, see what we can. It is also used kind of in other jurisdictions. It seems to be what people have
It will
landed
pop
on.
up a lot on the internet that way.
Yeah, and it's we try to be consistent for that reason. If people are looking for information on our webpage, it's industry standard might be a strong word, but
So just make sure there's no contradictions in the comp plan,
okay,
please.
sounds good.
Do you have a report, or Christine?
Christine put together a year-end report for you. It's always a good idea to talk about what we do here, why we're here, and how we do it.
All right, our second work session for the night and the year. The intent of this, again, just to provide a brief summation of the year, provide a little bit of refresher on what we're doing for the commonly seen dockets. And our intent is to do this each January. The past year, the Commission considered 46 dockets. They fell within 3 categories: special uses, rezonings, and comp plan amendments. All were applicant initiated. About 52% of the dockets were special uses. Three of the dockets, or 7%, were comp plan amendments. The remaining 40% were rezonings. Let's see. And I'm going to start with special uses because they're such a big part of the commission agenda. And the decision of the commission is final in these cases unless appealed because you're providing a quasi-judicial function. Within our zoning regulations, we have 34 different zoning districts. However, the majority of the zoning districts can be classified into 3 broad groupings, which are rural, residential, and commercial industrial. Within each of the zoning designations are a list of land uses. Some are permitted, which means they can be administratively reviewed and approved. And others are the special uses, and this is what the commission considers. The process is basically an applicant fills out a pre-app request online. We meet with the applicant. They discuss their project, and one of the things we really focus on is public involvement. Citizen involvement is required. We do have some flexibility, fortunately, through zoning, and we try to tailor it to the request and make sure it's appropriate for the specific case. In most cases, they're sending out letters to people within a certain radius of their home. Let's see. And they're required to do that generally about 2 weeks before submitting an online application. Once we receive that application, we send it out to relevant internal and external reviewers, as well as the board and the commission. So that's the letter or the email you get from me or Matthew or Dan about, a month or so before the board meets. That's when we have just received the application. We haven't really looked at it at all. We've just made sure the application is complete. You do have the opportunity, if at that time you have questions or suggestions anytime between when you receive that to the meeting date, to contact the case planner and ask any clarification questions, or really we're looking for ideas for anybody that we send this out to help us draft potential conditions, especially when it's a special use case. So please don't hesitate to contact whoever has sent you that email. Let's see. Also during that time, we start preparing our public notice as well as the memo and presentation. And the memo and that presentation include our recommendations for conditions. And they are based in large part by review comments we receive. It could be also from past cases. In large part, those conditions are intended to help mitigate potential impacts of the project. Project impacts are measured by factors for and against a special use request in the case of special use. These factors are there to help the commission fairly and consistently consider special use requests. So those are factors. They're in our zoning regulations. They were developed and approved by the Board of Supervisors, our policymaking board. And anytime we have an application, those are the factors we're measuring against. And that's, when we do a presentation, that's what you're hearing staff say. These are the factors. This is how we view this application, whether it meets those factors, whether it doesn't. And then we include the conditions at the end. And they could be in response to public input at times, or it could be just health, safety, and welfare concerns with the docket. Rezonings. Of the requests you heard this year for rezonings, 78% were downzoning requests. The remaining 4 dockets were upzoning. Downzonings tend to be in more isolated locations in the county where services and utilities are scarce. And in the case of rezonings, there are 15 factors to consider, some of which apply to downzonings, more of which apply to upzonings. But again, when you hear any of those rezoning requests, that's what you're going to hear staff talk about, the factors in favor of the request. All 3 of the comp plan amendments heard by commission were concurrent with rezoning requests. A rezoning may only be initiated if the proposed zoning is compatible with the underlying land use designation. If it's not, the applicant must seek and successfully obtain a land use map amendment concurrent to the rezoning request. There are factors we use to evaluate these requests. In these cases, the burden really is on the applicant to demonstrate that something has fundamentally changed in the overall development pattern. So maybe a lot of new development has occurred. There's a big road project. A good example of this could be the pending Port of Entry project, which was approved for a comp plan amendment a couple of years ago. That's where we, staff requested that we change the comp plan designation near the incoming new Port of Entry. However, that can also be a case of not much has happened and you know, we have not seen the development of a large plat that was proposed in the 1970s. And so in that case, it would be removing projects from a growth category. We did not have any text amendments in 2023. However, we just discussed agritourism, so I expect we will have at least one, hopefully more. These tend to be staff initiated. They tend to take a little bit of time. So as Dan said, we don't like to do them when there are a lot of other dockets on the agenda. We do have to prioritize the applicant initiated applications that come before you. But they are very helpful. Over time, they're in response to trends. Certain sections of the zoning can get old, or we're noticing a lot of new applications. Prior to this year, actually just before 2023, we had the solar and wind energy systems amendments, and that was fortunate timing because we got a whole lot of solar projects come in this past year. So we try to anticipate trends when we can, and look at sections in cases where if we have applications, we're seeing issues a lot of times. We're trying to help people out and keep the zoning fresh and reflective of best practices. So that's really what we're doing with those. The department has a lot of administrative functions, which you don't see a lot of. Planning itself has over a dozen applications, most are administrative, such as special events, minor land divisions, accessory living quarters, stuff like that. We have actually another board. You're our primary board. We have the Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning. That's what we serve in our planning division, but we have a building code advisory board, and our building department is the staff for that.
Pardon me, I have to go.
Okay, all right. No problem. So a lot of the department is focused on building permits. However, we also provide code compliance for the county itself, and that's a lot of work. Other department functions, board staff, hazard abatements, property cleanup. We've taken on a lot of housing functions, at least temporarily with CDBG. We do EPA grant administration, airport facility management. We have 2 airports in the county. Municipal planning and permitting support for the cities that don't have a lot of planning staff. We provide assistance to them. We assist with economic development, and then we have a lot of special projects where we're always assisting on. And on the slide right here, what you see at the top is a property in County Island, Sierra Vista, before property cleanup and then after. So a big difference. And these cases in particular take a lot of staff work and time. A lot of the revenue for our department actually comes from building permits. The total permit revenue in this past year was a little over $1 million. And what you can see is the majority, 61%, came from residential permits. And 21% came from non-residential permits. Although if you look at the total numbers, there is a lot more residential permits in terms of numbers. So, and that's why you see the 61% of revenue coming from that. We also have about 14% of permits that are not our responsibility. They're engineering, natural resources, health department, and then that 3%, the planning applications, that's stuff you guys see. And then you can see how this all works together. Our expenses have remained pretty flat. The general fund is in the middle, and what you see is our reliance on it over time has definitely gone down, whereas our revenue has gone up. And that's revenue from, you know, a lot of the functions I just mentioned, but permitting in particular. And that's all I have for the presentation. Questions, comments?
When I was hired in 2018, the permit fees were pretty low, much lower than our peer counties in Arizona. So we did raise the permit fees. We were probably less than 50%. The department was less than 50% funded by the fees that we charge for the services that we provide. And although we're not an enterprise fund, which is, you know, we have to generate the revenue in order to pay for all our expenses. We're not that. Typically, what you like to see in a planning department or development services department is that at least 75% of your expenses are covered by revenue from the fees you charge for the services you provide. This is an attempt, or this is good practice because, one, it keeps your taxes lower, and development pays for development, whereas the general fund is all taxpayers. My goal is to get it to 100%, but we've been a little bit slower. And also what it gets included in this, which skews it just a little bit, is asking for additional revenue for cleanup, hazard abatement of properties. So I usually get about $100,000 a year. I asked for $200,000 a year because we had a lot of big projects. That doesn't always pay for itself. At least it's not visible. What it does is increase property values by removing, you know, the example you saw is a perfect example of how that can really bring down property values in an area. So those type of investments aren't apparent in our revenue, but overall for the county and tax base, it's a positive.
That example is the property.
So that was in Fright Town site. It was really bad, and we moved forward with cleaning up that property. We were trying to foreclose on it. That didn't happen. We ended up cleaning up the property, and there's been a mobile manufactured home placed on the property since then. So it's occupied, but yeah, there was a absentee owner whose son kind of created that mess.
You could initiate a reality, so bring some more right.
Thank you, Christine. Is there anything else for planning?
Nope, that's it.
Anything from the commissioners?
I will say you do have a meeting next month. You're going to hear a special use and a rezoning. So you have a cell tower, a real cell tower, or a tall cell tower, and then I believe that's a down zoning. Yeah. So we'll see you next month. Happy New Year. Thank you again. We appreciate your time and efforts. We know you're volunteers, and you guys are a great commission. We do appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank all of you.
Adjourned.